Welcome to the lands of science fiction stories. I wish you a pleasant listening experience.
Zarek, a towering figure with gleaming, exoskeletal armor, stood at the front of the training grounds on the Coalition's flagship. Around him, soldiers from across the galaxy had gathered, representatives of a dozen species, each renowned for their advanced technology and superior weaponry. Among them was Riker Draven, the lone human. A chorus of jeers echoed as Zarek examined Riker's weapon, a humble rifle that seemed laughable among the plasma rifles, ion cannons, and particle beams surrounding him. Riker's face remained stoic, his grip steady on his M4 carbine, the same weapon that had served Earth's military for generations. Zarek's mandibles clicked in amusement as he ran a talon along the rifle's barrel. "You call this a weapon?" His voice was thick with condescension, a harsh, guttural sound. "Looks more like something to till the soil on a primitive farm." The aliens in the crowd erupted in laughter, their various vocalizations creating a cacophony that reverberated through the training hall. Riker remained silent, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward. "Come now, human," Zarek continued, the amusement never leaving his voice. "Why don't you tell us how this relic of a weapon compares to our advanced systems? Or perhaps you're just here for show?" Riker met Zarek's gaze, unflinching. "It does what it needs to," he said, his voice low but firm. More laughter followed, but Riker's focus never wavered. He knew what they thought of him, an inferior species wielding outdated technology, the token human representative in the United Galactic Coalition. But he had learned long ago that mocking words and smug superiority meant nothing in the field of battle. "You may think your plasma rifles and ion cannons are the pinnacle of technology," Riker said, his voice cutting through the laughter. "But sometimes the old ways are still the best." Zarek raised one of his plated brows, intrigued. "The best? You humans are amusing." He turned to the crowd. "Shall we put the human's claim to the test? Let him show us what his so-called weapon can do." Riker gave a slight nod. "Gladly." The soldiers moved toward the firing range, a massive room lined with targets designed to withstand the might of the galaxy's most powerful weapons. Plasma burns, scorched metal, and deep gouges from particle beams lined the walls, a testament to the destructive power of the Coalition's technology. As Riker stepped up to the range, he felt the weight of 100 eyes on him. Zarek leaned against a console, crossing his arms. "Let's see what your antique can manage," he said. First target, an unshielded plate of metal. Riker took his position, flipping off the safety on his rifle. He steadied his breathing, his heart beating in rhythm with the hum of the range's machinery. The target, a simple sheet of alloy, appeared at the far end of the range. Riker squeezed the trigger, the sharp crack of the rifle ringing through the room. The bullet tore through the metal, leaving a clean hole dead center. The laughter died abruptly. Zarek's mandibles twitched, and he narrowed his eyes at the small hole in the plate. "Impressive," he admitted, though his voice was laced with reluctance. "But let's see how it fares against one of our shields." He gestured toward another target, a shimmering energy shield that flickered as it appeared down the range. Riker took a moment to adjust his sights. He knew what the aliens expected, that the bullet would bounce off or disintegrate on contact. But he had faced this scenario before. Taking a deep breath, he fired again. The round hit the shield with a faint flicker of light, passing through it as if it wasn't even there. A second later, the metallic clang of the bullet striking the target behind the shield echoed through the room. Silence. Zarek's face twisted with confusion, his mandibles clicking in frustration. "That shouldn't be possible." "How?" "Simple," Riker interrupted. "Kinetic weapons don't interact with energy dispersion fields. Your shields are designed to stop plasma, beams of light, energy. My rifle doesn't use energy. It uses physics." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Aliens exchanged uneasy glances, processing what they had just witnessed. This wasn't how they had expected the demonstration to go. Zarek's smugness faltered, but he wasn't ready to concede defeat. "That's just brute force," he said, his voice rising slightly. "There's no precision, no elegance in it." "Maybe not," Riker replied, locking eyes with Zarek. "But sometimes brute force is all you need." Zarek's mandibles twitched again, this time in irritation. Very well, human. Let's see how your crude weapon handles a more challenging scenario. He gestured to the technicians, who quickly activated a series of automated targets. The targets zipped across the range, their erratic movements and energy shields presenting a challenge for even the Coalition's most advanced weaponry. Riker raised his rifle, his face set in concentration. The targets moved fast, darting left and right, up and down. He fired in rapid succession, each shot finding its mark. One by one, the targets flickered out as the bullets pierced their shields and struck the metal plates behind them. The aliens watched in stunned silence as Riker methodically took down the targets, his movements precise, his focus unwavering. When the last target fell, the room was silent again, save for the hum of the machinery powering down. Zarek stood still, his mandibles tight with suppressed frustration. He had expected to mock, to deride the human's primitive weapon, but instead he found himself facing an undeniable truth. Riker lowered his rifle, his expression calm. "It's not always about having the most advanced technology," he said quietly. "Sometimes, it's about understanding how to use what you have." Zarek said nothing, his pride wounded, but the respect in his eyes was undeniable. The other aliens, once mocking and dismissive, now looked at Riker with a new sense of awareness. This human, this bearer of a primitive weapon, had just shown them that there was strength in simplicity. And that, sometimes, the most dangerous force in the galaxy wasn't the one you could see, but the one you underestimated. The air was thick with the weight of silence as Riker stood at the range, his rifle still warm from the shots that had silenced the jeers. The alien soldiers, once so quick to mock his weapon, now stared at him with a mix of confusion and newfound respect. But one gaze still burned with prideful challenge, Zarek's. His mandibles twitched, betraying his frustration. "I will admit, human," Zarek began, his voice slower, deliberate, "you've proven that your weapon is not as primitive as it seems. But let's see how it performs against something a bit more resistant." He gestured toward the far end of the range, where a towering figure of metal and energy began to rise from beneath the floor. The alien soldiers exchanged glances, recognizing the test that was about to unfold. The target was no simple metal sheet, nor a basic energy shield. It was the Aegis barrier, the ultimate defense system of the Coalition's elite forces. The barrier shimmered, layers of energy and reinforced alloy woven together into a construct that could withstand even the heaviest of plasma cannons and disruptor beams. It stood like an unassailable wall, casting a daunting shadow over the range. Riker's eyes narrowed as he sized up the challenge. He had heard of the Aegis barrier, a shield so advanced that it could absorb, deflect, and disperse almost any known form of energy-based weaponry. But Riker wasn't wielding energy, he was wielding cold, hard physics. Zarek's mandibles clicked again, though this time there was no humor in his voice. "Let's see how your kinetic toy fares against this human. I'd wager it won't even leave a dent." The crowd stirred, the aliens murmuring in their various languages. Some wore smirks of certainty, others remained skeptical after Riker's previous performance. But all eyes were on him, waiting to see how this next test would play out. Riker remained unfazed. He calmly reached into his pack, pulling out a special magazine filled with armor-piercing rounds. These weren't standard issue, they had been crafted specifically for moments like this, where precision and force were the only things standing between victory and defeat. He loaded the magazine into his rifle with a sharp click and walked back to the firing line. Zarek watched with growing interest, leaning forward slightly. "You seem confident, human," he said, his voice a low rumble. "But confidence won't be enough." Riker glanced at him briefly, then returned his attention to the target. He took a deep breath, his body relaxing as he fell into the familiar rhythm of combat. His finger rested lightly on the trigger, his aim steady. In the silence of the range, time seemed to slow. Riker exhaled, and in one fluid motion he squeezed the trigger. The sharp crack of the rifle echoed through the hall, followed by the distinct ping of the bullet impacting the barrier. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The Aegis barrier stood tall and impenetrable, its surface gleaming under the harsh lights. Then, a faint fissure appeared where the bullet had struck. It spread slowly at first, then faster, until a small, jagged section of the energy field flickered out of existence, revealing the alloy underneath. A low murmur rippled through the crowd, disbelief and awe mingling in their voices. Riker wasn't done. He adjusted his aim slightly and fired again. Another crack, another hit. This time, the fissure spread wider, the outer layer of alloy splintering under the concentrated force. Piece by piece, the aegis barrier began to show its vulnerability. Zarek's mandibles twitched furiously. "Impossible," he muttered under his breath. "That shield is designed to withstand everything." "Everything except this," Riker replied calmly, chambering another round. "You've built defenses to stop energy, but physical force? That's another story." He fired again, and with a final, satisfying crack, the aegis barrier collapsed. The energy field fizzled out, and the reinforced alloy split open, revealing a gaping hole where Riker's bullets had torn through. The room fell deathly silent. Even the hum of the range's machinery seemed to quiet in the wake of the barrier's fall. Riker lowered his rifle, glancing at Zarek. The alien commander's pride had been shattered just as thoroughly as the barrier before him. His arms were crossed, his expression unreadable, but the tension in his body spoke volumes. Zarek cleared his throat, his voice low and begrudging. "It seems we have underestimated your methods." Riker shrugged, his tone casual. "You wouldn't be the first." Zarek's eyes flicked toward the shattered remains of the aegis barrier. His soldiers, once so certain of their superiority, now stood in silence, their gazes lingering on the human who had just dismantled their greatest defense with nothing more than a rifle. The air was thick with the unspoken realization that perhaps, just perhaps, they had overlooked something crucial. But Zarek was not ready to concede fully. "That was impressive, human, but power isn't everything. Let's see how you fare in a real combat scenario. You may have bested the barrier, but can you handle a battlefield with live opponents?" Riker's lips curled into a faint smile. He knew what was coming next, a live combat drill, pitting him against a squad of coalition soldiers. The aliens were faster, stronger, and equipped with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. It would be the ultimate test of his abilities, and of humanity's resilience in the face of overwhelming odds. Zarek gestured to the control panel, his mandibles clicking in anticipation. "Prepare the combat simulation," he ordered. "Let's see if the human's weapon can survive where it truly matters, on the battlefield." The soldiers in the room began to stir, their anticipation building. This was the moment they had been waiting for, the chance to put the human to the test. Riker, however, remained calm, his grip on the rifle steady. He knew that this wasn't just about his weapon. It was about proving that humanity's strength didn't lie in advanced technology or flashy tactics. It lay in adaptability, precision, and the unyielding will to survive. As the simulation room prepared for the upcoming battle, Riker took a deep breath, his mind focused on the challenge ahead. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment to show them all what a human could really do. The tension in the room thickened as the doors to the combat simulation chamber slid open with a mechanical hiss. The alien soldiers filed in, their advanced energy rifles humming to life as they prepared for the battle to come. Riker Draven stepped in after them, his M4 rifle resting calmly in his hands. The other soldiers eyed him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, the earlier demonstrations still fresh in their minds, but now they wanted to see if the human could handle real combat. Zarek's voice echoed across the chamber. "This will be no ordinary exercise, human. You will face a fully armed and armored coalition squad. Let's see if your rifle can keep you alive when plasma is flying." Riker's face remained impassive as he loaded his rifle, chambering a round with a swift motion. He had faced worse odds before. As the simulation began, the alien squad immediately took their positions, spreading out across the terrain, their weapons at the ready. Riker crouched low behind a barrier, listening to the faint hum of their energy rifles and the shuffling of their armor. His heart beat steadily, his senses honed from years of experience. A red light blinked on the console, signaling the start of the battle. The chamber came to life with simulated cover, dense foliage, and urban obstacles. Riker spotted the first alien soldier moving swiftly across the battlefield, taking cover behind a synthetic boulder. Without hesitation, Riker raised his rifle and squeezed the trigger. The sharp crack echoed through the chamber, and the alien soldier dropped, his energy shield useless against the kinetic force of the bullet. "One down," Riker muttered under his breath. Zarek watched from the control room, his mandibles twitching. "Lucky shot." The alien squad adjusted their tactics, moving faster, their energy rifles blazing as they fired plasma bolts at Riker's position. He ducked behind cover, feeling the heat of the plasma bursts as they scorched the ground near him. But unlike his opponents, Riker didn't rely on shields or technology to keep him alive. He relied on instinct and training. Moving quickly, Riker popped out from cover and fired 3 rapid shots, each one finding its target. The aliens' shields flickered and failed as their armor couldn't withstand the precision of his fire. Their advanced technology, built to counter energy-based attacks, was useless against the physical rounds that tore through them with brutal efficiency. Zarek clenched his fists, watching as his elite soldiers fell one by one. "How can this be?" he growled. "Your tactics rely on speed and technology," Riker called out, his voice carrying over the battlefield. "But you're overcomplicating things." A plasma bolt zipped past Riker's head as the last few aliens regrouped, their confidence shaken. Riker could see the desperation in their movements. They were used to overwhelming their enemies with superior firepower, but now, faced with a human using a weapon they had dismissed as obsolete, they were beginning to realize their mistake. Riker moved through the battlefield like a predator, his movements smooth and calculated. He fired again, dropping another alien soldier. With only 2 left, he closed in, knowing they were pinned down. The final soldier, a towering figure clad in shimmering energy armor, charged at Riker with a plasma blade igniting in his hands. The crowd watching from the control room gasped in anticipation. Zarek leaned forward, eager to see the human falter. But Riker was ready. The alien warrior swung his plasma blade in a wide arc, aiming to end the fight with a single, decisive strike. Riker dodged to the side with lightning reflexes, his rifle coming up in one smooth motion. The alien's momentum carried him forward, and Riker pulled the trigger, sending a single round into the warrior's exposed flank. The alien stumbled, his armor failing to protect him from the direct impact. A second shot finished him. Only one enemy remained, Zarek. The commander stood tall on the far side of the battlefield, his mandibles clicking in anger. He had seen enough. With a low growl, he activated his personal energy shield, a shimmering dome of light surrounding him, and drew his own plasma rifle. Zarek was no ordinary soldier. He had earned his position through countless battles, and he was not about to let a human, of all species, defeat him. Riker advanced slowly, his eyes locked on Zarek. The other soldiers in the control room watched in silence, their earlier jeers now replaced by tense anticipation. "You've proven yourself to be a capable warrior, human," Zarek said, his voice cold. "But this ends now." Riker simply nodded. He had no interest in words. Zarek opened fire, his plasma rifle spewing bolts of energy that lit up the battlefield. Riker ducked and weaved, the heat of the plasma grazing his skin. The sheer power of Zarek's weaponry was overwhelming, but Riker knew its weakness: overheating. Plasma weapons, despite their strength, were prone to losing effectiveness after continuous fire. As Zarek's shots became erratic, his rifle venting steam, Riker saw his opening. He aimed carefully, knowing he had one chance. His finger tightened on the trigger, and the bullet flew straight and true, striking the center of Zarek's shield. The shield flared, struggling to absorb the kinetic energy, but Riker's rounds were not energy, they were force. The shield wavered for a moment, then shattered with a brilliant flash. Zarek's eyes widened in disbelief as his shield disintegrated. Before he could react, Riker fired again, the bullet slamming into the commander's shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. The room fell silent. Riker lowered his rifle, his chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. He walked toward Zarek, who lay on the ground, clutching his wound. The alien commander looked up at the human, his pride shattered, his body defeated. Riker stood over him, his expression unreadable. "Sometimes, it's not about having the best technology," he said quietly. "It's about knowing how to use what you've got." Zarek struggled to speak, his mandibles twitching in pain. "We underestimated you," he finally admitted, his voice strained. "Humans are not what we thought." Riker glanced back at the control room, where the alien soldiers watched in stunned silence. Their superiority complex had been dismantled, piece by piece, along with their belief in their invincibility. "We're not done yet," Riker said, his tone calm but resolute. "But now you know, we adapt. We survive." He turned and walked away, leaving Zarek on the ground. As Riker exited the simulation chamber, the whispers of the alien soldiers followed him. They had witnessed something that day, something that would change the way they viewed humanity forever. In the end, it wasn't about the weapon. It was about the will behind it, the strength to push forward, no matter the odds. And as Riker left the battlefield, one thing was certain: humanity had proven its place in the galaxy.